Hello everyone, Craig Hadley here. It's time for another episode of Hadley's History. So last week was the 75th anniversary of VE Day. What was VE Day, you might ask? VE Day stands for Victory in Europe. That marks the day of May 8th, 1945, when Nazi Germany formally surrendered to the Allied forces. So the theme for this week's episode is World War II in the European Theater of Operations. So let's first start off with a Tippecanoe County fun fact. U.S. war bond drives were a big deal all across the United States during World War II, including here in Tippecanoe County. In fact, here in Lafayette, we had a number of bond drives that took place. A few celebrities actually came and showed up. At Purdue, we even had a bond drive that included the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra with a young Frank Sinatra singing, including celebrities like Dorothy Lamour, and even Duke Wellington and his orchestra made his first visit here to Lafayette during that time. This week we have a visiting guest. Special living historian Corey Vaughn is going to talk to us a little bit about the 82nd Airborne and its role in World War II. Corey?
Hello everyone, my name is Corey Vaughn. I'm a reenactor and living historian. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the Second World War and specifically paratroopers. In case you didn't know, paratroopers are soldiers who use parachutes to parachute behind enemy lines to fight the enemy, and they have to be self-reliant and self-sufficient for several days. During World War II, there were several U.S. infantry divisions that were specifically paratrooper rated and qualified. This one I am portraying a member of the 82nd Airborne Division. The 82nd Airborne jumped into Sicily and Italy in 1943 and into Normandy and Holland in 1944. I am wearing the uniform and equipment of a soldier who would have jumped into Normandy during what we would know as D-Day. So, let's go ahead and talk about some of the equipment of a paratrooper in 1944 during D-Day. Starting from the top, I wear a steel pot helmet. Now, many people believe that these were designed to stop bullets. They're really not. They're designed to stop what is called a shrapnel. This is flying bits of metal from exploding mortar shells or artillery shells or even grenades. A bullet will actually pass right through it. Over it, I have what is just a normal net. This cuts down on the shine and reflectivity of the metal on the helmet. You can also camouflage it with different bits of foliage or whatever you find. You have extra chin straps to keep it from blowing off of your head during the parachute jump. The uniform I wear, as you can see, has a lot of pockets. Again, paratroopers are supposed to be self-sufficient for several days worth of fighting. They have to carry all of their food and ammunition needed to survive by themselves. It can be a very loose-fitting uniform, and when you are loaded down with equipment, your pockets bulge out. The paratroopers actually earned the nickname Devils in Baggy Pants during the Italian campaign. Starting off with some other major equipment, paratroopers, obviously jumping behind enemy lines, don't have any major means of communication, so they had to rely on radios. This is the BC-611. It would weigh about 3 pounds, and it's the Going on to weapons. This weapon is the M1A1 carbine. It was specifically designed for paratroopers because it has a folding stock. You can easily tuck this behind your parachute, sling it on your leg, get it out of the way really, really easily. It is gas powered, it is semi-automatic, so every time you pull the trigger, it would automatically reload the next round of ammunition into the chamber for you. It fires from a box magazine, and it fires 15 rounds. This is basically a little bit hotter than a regular pistol round, but it's a nice, light, handy weapon. Going on to my belt, I have what are called rigger pouches. These are specifically designed pouches by paratroopers, built by paratroopers. This allows them to carry extra ammunition than a regular soldier would. For example, in this pouch, I can fit 5 magazines for the M1 carbine. Again, each one carrying 15 rounds. Paratroopers would carry up to 5 of these individual pouches. Hand grenades, fuse of about 3 to 5 seconds. And for extra firepower, many paratroopers chose to carry pistols. This is the 1911 pistol. It is 45 ACP and fires from a 7-round internal magazine. This is a 1-quart canteen and cup, in case I need to boil water for anything. This is actually the only water paratroopers would carry into combat. Once on the ground, they were expected to find either their own source of water and use water purification tablets, or be resupplied by someone else. On the back is my backpack. You carry all of your extra food and any extra ammunition in that as well. It's not as big as other backpacks because, well, you don't want to carry any extra equipment you don't need. Coming along to the side, have what the Army called the entrenching tool. This is actually just a shovel. Use it for digging trenches, repairing things, anything you need a shovel for. Keep rolling. One more bit of kit. This is actually a holdover from World War I. This is the 1918 trench knife, also called a knuckle duster. It has a pair of brass knuckles. It's a two-sided blade. Paratroopers are some rough and tumble people, so they were given extra means of doing their job. On my hip, I have what the Army called an entrenching tool, what we would call nowadays just a regular shovel. Use it for anything you need to dig a hole with. In the black bag, I have the Army assault gas mask. The Allies were afraid that Hitler was going to decide to use poison gas on the battlefield, so every soldier was expected to keep their gas mask with them at all times. This is actually a holdover from World War I, but this is the 1918 trench knife. It has a pair of brass knuckles and a pair of double-edged blade. Paratroopers needed extra implements to do their job. With being self-sufficient for 3 days, paratroopers were also expected to carry their own food. This is the U.S. Army K ration. This is one meal. This is specifically dinner. So it would take 3 of these boxes for 1 day to feed a soldier. Now, soldiers were expected to feed themselves for 3 days, so it would take a total of 9 boxes to feed a soldier for 3 days. Inside of this would be 1 can of meat. You would have 2 packs of crackers. You'd have a pack of matches, and you would have the all-important roll of toilet paper and the 4 cigarettes. I like to call this the first Happy Meal. It's the first meal in a box. Continuing down, I have another knife on my leg. This one was specifically designed in case the paratrooper got held up in a tree while he was still hanging in his chute. You can easily grab that and cut your risers. And finally, we finish off with the high-topped paratrooper boot. These were specifically designed for the paratrooper because it adds extra ankle support. These are a mark of pride and honor for paratroopers, so they kept them highly polished. There are many reports and many instances where if somebody who is not a paratrooper was caught wearing these, they would often wind up in some back alley bruised and beaten and with their boots cut off. So, that was a little bit about paratroopers during the Second World War. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, thank a veteran.
Thanks, Corey. That was great. And now it's time for the Artifact of the Day. To expand upon some of what Corey just talked about, the Artifact of the Week comes from my own personal collection once again. We're going to talk about today the M1 carbine. Just prior to World War II, the United States Army was looking for a replacement of the 1911 .45 caliber Colt sidearm that was pretty much standard across the board. However, it was too bulky and hard to train on, and they needed something that was in between the full-size rifle of the M1 Garand, which was a 30-06 rifle, and the 1911 sidearm. So they came up with a design that was lightweight, had effective range of almost 300 yards, and fired a 30 caliber bullet, and that was the M1 carbine. Originally designed as a lightweight rifle that could be slung easily over the shoulder by support personnel behind the front lines, as well as a lightweight weapon utilized by paratroops, it quickly gained favor with frontline troops as well. With a range of up to 300 yards, it proved to be an accurate and reliable weapon. The M1 carbine carried a standard 15-round magazine that you inserted here and basically inserted the round that way. Now, you could get an extended 30-round magazine if you really wanted to, but right now the 15 magazine was the standard. This particular M1 carbine happens to be the gun that my father taught me to shoot with, and how I learned how to shoot at the age of 8. There's also something else very special about this particular M1 carbine, located right here on the buttstock. It's difficult to see under this light and with a camera, but etched onto the buttstock is a personal inscription made out to my father, Buddy Hadley, from none other than Carbine Williams. David Marshall Williams designed the short gas stroke piston that helps operate this M1 carbine, giving him the nickname of Carbine Williams. What's more fascinating about Mr. Williams is that he ended up inventing a lot of his patents while he was in prison in North Carolina as a convicted murderer. It's a fascinating and little-known piece of World War II history, and it just makes my enjoyment of this gun that much more. It's also a lot of fun to shoot. Now, that said, let's continue with our theme of World War II, and it's time for
History According to Hollywood.
This week's recommended film is a HBO miniseries entitled Band of Brothers. This is following the exploits of Easy Company as part of the 101st Airborne during World War II and its invasion of Europe. This is probably the most historically accurate thing done on the World War II theater that I have ever seen done. It's meticulously researched and also a true life story. Now, you can get this by ordering it off of Amazon, or you can actually download it and stream it on HBO On Demand if you happen to have HBO. The miniseries is actually produced by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, who once again showed their attention to detail with all the historical material culture as well as the facts. I highly recommend taking time to watch this. It's the best thing done on World War II out there. And now it's time for the recommended book of the week. If you remember in episode 2, the theme was the Civil War, and we talked about the movie The Red Badge of Courage, co-starring Bill Mauldin, who I told you was the Pulitzer Prize-winning author of Up Front. Well, guess what? That's my recommended book of the week. Up Front by Bill Mauldin. Bill Mauldin was a war correspondent in the Italian campaign during World War II, who was famous for writing for Stars and Stripes, and especially his comic strip, Willie and Joe. Willie and Joe were two hapless soldiers who always seemed to be on the wrong end of the stick. And as the common dog face, they got very popular among the troops and made Bill Mauldin famous. Once again, you can get this book by ordering off of Amazon, and it's definitely worth reading. It's a lot of fun, it's very funny, and very insightful into the things that were going on in the Italian campaign during World War II. And a lot of great excerpts of his comic, Willie and Joe. Well, that's all the time we've got this week. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and we hope to catch you next time on
Hadley's History.